The young and the restless spoilers Phyllis had reached a breaking point. The pain, both physical and emotional, had become unbearable, and with every passing moment, it seemed to seep deeper into her very soul. In a fit of overwhelming agony, she slumped back onto the plush sofa, her body convulsing before finally going still as she fell into an unnerving state of unconsciousness. Sharon, who had been standing guard nearby, immediately noticed the abrupt change in Phyllis's condition. Panic clutched her heart as she rushed to her friend's side, desperate to wake her up or at least understand what was happening. Before Sharon could even get close enough to check Phyllis's pulse, the heavy wooden door creaked open with an ominous sound. In the doorway stood a man whose appearance sent shivers down Sharon's spine. It was Alan, an enigmatic figure whose very presence evoked dread and uncertainty. His eyes, cold and calculating, scanned the room as if he were a scientist meticulously examining his latest experiment. "Alan?" Sharon stuttered, her voice trembling as she tried to gather the fragments of her shattered courage. "Why are you doing this? I haven't done anything wrong to you. Why are you imprisoning me?" Alan's voice was calm and measured, yet there was an undeniable malice lurking beneath his composed exterior. "You see, my dear," he began, stepping further into the room with an air of twisted satisfaction, "we are nothing more than lab rats in my experiment. Each of you is a subject, a means to understand the intricate boundaries of human endurance." As he spoke, Alan paced slowly, as if savoring every word. "Phyllis, you will be the first sacrifice," he declared with a chilling finality, "and once she is gone, you, Sharon, will be next." His words cut through the air like a knife, each syllable loaded with the promise of imminent terror. Sharon's eyes widened in horror as tears began to stream down her face. "Please, Alan, I beg you," she cried, her voice breaking under the weight of despair. "I want to live. Let Phyllis die, but spare me. I cannot bear the thought of losing both of us." Unbeknownst to Alan, though, Phyllis's story was not over. As she lay motionless on the sofa, a spark of resilience still burned within her. Though her body had betrayed her with a convincing portrayal of unconsciousness, her mind remained alert. Every word, every malicious tone from Alan's lips reached her ears, and deep inside, she was biding her time. Her silent vow was clear: she would not let this twisted experiment continue at the expense of her and Sharon's lives. The tension in the room escalated rapidly. Driven by desperation and the instinct to protect her friend, Sharon attempted to make a move. She lunged forward, determined to seize control of the situation and fight back against the man who had terrorized them both. But Alan, ever prepared for such resistance, reacted with terrifying speed. In an instant, he seized Sharon's neck with a vice-like grip, halting her desperate assault before it could even fully materialize. "Sit still," Alan commanded, his tone now laced with cold authority. "Wait for your inevitable end. If you entertain me with a modicum of cooperation, perhaps I will consider sparing your life for a little longer. But resist, and you will join Phyllis in death." The room was filled with a heavy, suffocating silence punctuated only by Sharon's muffled cries as the pressure on her throat intensified. In that moment, the line between hope and despair blurred. Sharon's mind raced with conflicting thoughts: fear for her own life, sorrow for Phyllis, and the overwhelming realization that their fate had been cruelly sealed by a man whose heart seemed devoid of any compassion. As the seconds dragged on, Sharon's eyes darted around the room, seeking any possible escape or weapon that might aid her in turning the tide. In her tear-stained gaze, she found solace in one undeniable truth: she still had Phyllis by her side. Even in her apparent lifeless state, Phyllis was there, a silent sentinel waiting for the opportune moment to strike back at their captor. It was a silent promise between two women bound by hardship and shared suffering, a promise that they would not go down without a fight. Alan, however, remained unfazed by the display of emotion and vulnerability. He continued to taunt Sharon with calculated cruelty, his voice echoing in the dimly lit room. "You will sit here and wait. I control the experiment, and soon enough, I will decide who lives and who dies." Do not think for a moment that you can change the outcome. As Sharon's grip on consciousness began to waver, the oppressive fear mingled with a steely determination. Her heart pounded in her chest like a frantic drum, each beat resonating with the hope that somehow, some way, they might escape this nightmare. Clinging to that fragile thread of hope, she wrapped her arms around Phyllis, seeking comfort in the warmth of her friend's presence even as the situation spiraled into darkness. Inside Sharon's mind, memories of better times collided with the harsh reality of the present. There were days when laughter filled the air, and the world seemed a kinder place. Those memories now felt like distant echoes, a painful reminder of what was at stake. Sharon was not willing to surrender to despair. She was a fighter, and the love she shared with Phyllis was a bond too precious to be shattered by the cruelty of their captor. In the midst of chaos, Phyllis's internal struggle became a beacon of resistance. Every minute that passed was a calculated delay, a moment to gather strength, to plan, and to wait for that perfect opportunity to turn the tables on Alan. Her mind, though seemingly dormant to the casual observer, was a maelstrom of strategies and counterattacks. She had seen Alan's vulnerabilities before, hidden beneath his arrogant exterior, and she was determined to exploit them when the moment was right. The room, now a stage for this silent battle of wills, seemed to pulse with an almost tangible energy. The flickering light from a solitary lamp cast eerie shadows on the walls, mirroring the tumultuous emotions churning within the characters. Every second that passed was heavy with unspoken promises of retribution and redemption. The stakes were higher than ever, life and death hung in the balance, and only one outcome was certain: change was coming, whether Alan liked it or not. With a final, strained cry that reverberated through the oppressive atmosphere, Sharon's plea for mercy transformed into a raw expression of defiance. "I will not let you win," she murmured, her voice barely audible over the sound of her labored breathing. "We may be your lab rats now, but we are still human. And humans have the power to fight back." Alan's eyes narrowed at her words, his expression twisting into something akin to fury. For a brief moment, the calculated calm in his demeanor faltered, betraying a hint of uncertainty. That fleeting expression of vulnerability was all Phyllis needed. Summoning every ounce of hidden strength, she prepared to unleash a counterattack, a desperate, last-ditch effort to reclaim their freedom and defy the macabre experiment that had ensnared them. In that charged instant, the battle lines were drawn. It was a confrontation not merely of physical strength, but of wills, a clash between cruelty and the unyielding spirit of those who refused to be broken. The echoes of Alan's threat still hung in the air. "Wait for death," he had said, as if it were the final decree. But in that dark, suffocating room, something else was stirring. Hope, fragile yet persistent, mingled with the determination to fight for survival. Sharon's tearful embrace of Phyllis was not just an act of sorrow. It was a silent vow that together, they would stand against the tyranny that sought to extinguish their lives. In the ensuing moments, as Alan's grip tightened and the reality of their impending fate loomed large, the power dynamics of this cruel experiment began to shift. Phyllis, though appearing vulnerable, was preparing for a moment that could alter the course of their tragic narrative. And Sharon, with every tear shed and every desperate plea, reaffirmed her commitment to resist, to hold on to life, and to defy the cruel fate laid out by a man who saw them as nothing more than test subjects. Thus, in a room shrouded by despair and lit only by the dim glow of a solitary lamp, the seeds of rebellion were sown. The battle was far from over. It was a fight for survival, for dignity, and for the right to choose one's destiny, even if that destiny meant defying the very hands that sought to control it. In that fraught silence, where every heartbeat echoed the promise of resistance, Phyllis and Sharon silently prepared to reclaim their narrative from the clutches of cruelty, determined to show that even in the darkest of moments, the human spirit could never be truly tamed. Alan had long hidden behind a facade of charm and congeniality. His recent behavior, however, betrayed a darker agenda. In his latest scheme, Alan had set his sights on Tracy, a gentle soul who had long dreamed of a serene, happy life. With a cunning glimmer in his eyes, Alan had meticulously orchestrated an elaborate plan. It was not enough for him to simply win Tracy's heart, he had ulterior motives that went far beyond the realm of romance. For Alan, this was merely another experiment, another way to assert control over vulnerable lives. Tracy, blissfully in love and blinded by the hope of a perfect marriage, remained unaware of the sinister calculations unfolding behind the scenes. She had always been the kind of woman who believed in the transformative power of love. A woman who could see beauty in every small act of kindness. To her, Alan's proposal seemed like a beacon of promise for a future filled with warmth and security. Yet beneath his persuasive words and tailored suit lay a mind teeming with malice and a thirst for manipulation. Jack, on the other hand, had seen the shadows that lurked behind Alan's seemingly polished exterior for far too long. As someone who had experienced the ruthlessness of betrayal firsthand, Jack had taken it upon himself to act as Tracy's silent guardian. He had uncovered fragments of evidence that hinted at Alan's true intentions, a plan that would see Tracy unwittingly become the next victim in a series of calculated deceptions. Jack knew that Alan had been orchestrating his moves with the precision of a seasoned puppeteer, using Tracy's vulnerability as the perfect canvas for his twisted experiments. In the quiet hours before the proposal, Jack had meticulously gathered every piece of evidence he could find. His nights were spent poring over confidential files, revisiting old conversations, and scrutinizing the smallest details of Alan's behavior. Every clue pointed to the same conclusion: Alan's interest in Tracy was not driven by genuine affection but by a desire to exploit her trust and ultimately cause her irreparable harm. Jack's determination to protect Tracy was rooted in a deep sense of loyalty and a belief that she deserved nothing less than a peaceful, honest life, a life free from manipulation and hidden dangers. The night of the planned proposal was shrouded in a deceptive calm. The venue was set, a quaint, softly lit garden that mirrored the idyllic life Tracy had always envisioned. As the guests gathered and the soft hum of romantic music filled the air, Tracy's heart soared with anticipation. Every detail, from the delicate table settings to the subtle flicker of candlelight, seemed orchestrated to embody the very essence of love. Yet, lurking in the background, Jack's vigilant eyes never wavered. He was acutely aware that beneath this picturesque scene, Alan's true intentions were poised to unfold. Alan's charm was in full display as he took center stage. His voice, smooth and persuasive, flowed over the gathered crowd as he recounted stories of love, destiny, and the promise of an extraordinary future together. For a fleeting moment, it appeared as though his words were steeped in sincerity. Tracy, enraptured by his eloquence, felt the stirrings of hope blossom within her heart. But Jack's mind raced with doubts. He recalled the whispered warnings and the pieces of evidence he had painstakingly collected. He knew that Alan's proposal was merely the final act in a much more nefarious play. As the moment of truth neared, Jack decided it was time to confront the grim reality. In a private conversation away from prying eyes, he approached Tracy with the evidence he had assembled. With a trembling voice, he recounted the chilling details of Alan's history, a litany of manipulated relationships, forced decisions, and the cold, calculated nature of his actions. Tracy listened, her eyes wide with disbelief. The truth, once hidden beneath the veil of romance, now threatened to shatter the very foundation of her dreams. The air grew heavy with the impending weight of betrayal. Tracy's heart pounded as she began to piece together the disturbing reality: Alan was not the caring, devoted partner he had appeared to be. Instead, he was a dangerous man with a sinister agenda, a man who saw her as nothing more than another lab rat in his twisted experiment. The realization hit her like a tidal wave of despair. Tears welled up in her eyes as the full magnitude of the betrayal set in. She had placed her trust and love in a man whose true intentions were as dark as they were destructive. In the midst of the proposal, as Alan prepared to kneel and offer his ring, a symbol of a promise that now seemed a cruel irony, Tracy's world began to crumble. The mask of romance dissolved, revealing the manipulative puppeteer behind it all. In that harrowing moment, the crowd fell silent as the tension thickened. Tracy's voice trembled as she demanded answers. "Alan, why? How could you do this? She whispered, barely audible over the pounding of her own heart. Alan's calm facade faltered for an instant. The eyes of those gathered now searched his face for any hint of remorse, but there was none. Instead, his expression hardened as he replied in a tone devoid of the warmth she had once cherished. This isn't about love, Tracy. It's about control, about proving that even the purest hearts can be twisted if the right conditions are met. His words, cold and clinical, left no room for misunderstanding. This proposal was a trap, designed not to celebrate love, but to ensnare a soul and subject it to his merciless experiment. Jack stepped forward at that moment, his voice firm and resolute. "Enough, Alan," he declared, his eyes burning with the conviction of one who has seen too many lives ruined by deception. "Tracy deserves a life of honesty and peace. She does not deserve to be used as a pawn in your twisted game." His intervention, though laden with the weight of painful truths, was a lifeline thrown to someone drowning in the sea of betrayal. Tracy's tears flowed freely as the realization of her shattered dreams overwhelmed her. The serene vision of marital bliss she had so desperately clung to was now a distant, painful memory, replaced by the harsh reality of manipulation and betrayal. In that moment, the very foundations of her world collapsed. The promise of a peaceful, ordinary life had been usurped by the machinations of a man whose heart knew no empathy. As the guests murmured in shock and disbelief, Jack continued to lay out the evidence, piecing together the timeline of Alan's past misdeeds and exposing the patterns of his behavior. The clarity of Jack's words contrasted starkly with the chaos of emotions swirling within Tracy. The room was filled with an almost palpable silence, each heartbeat echoing the weight of truth and the pain of lost hope. For Tracy, the revelation was a crucible, a moment that demanded resilience in the face of overwhelming grief. Though her tears fell like rain, they also marked the beginning of a journey towards reclaiming her dignity and independence. Jack's steadfast support provided a beacon of light in the darkness, a reminder that even in the wake of betrayal, the strength to rebuild lay within her. In the days that followed, the impact of Alan's exposure rippled through their lives. The once celebrated proposal became a cautionary tale, a stark reminder of how the allure of romance can sometimes mask the most sinister of intentions. Tracy, though scarred by the betrayal, slowly began to piece together the fragments of her shattered dreams. With Jack by her side, she embarked on a path towards healing, determined to reclaim her life and restore the belief that true love could exist without manipulation or deceit. Jack's role as protector and truth-teller solidified in the eyes of those who witnessed the unmasking of Alan's true character. His commitment to safeguarding Tracy was not just an act of duty, but a profound expression of loyalty and compassion. He knew that healing would take time, and that the scars of betrayal would linger, but he also believed that every person had the strength to overcome even the deepest wounds. In the end, Alan's dark experiment was thwarted not by brute force, but by the unwavering determination to seek truth and honor the sanctity of genuine love. Tracy, having faced the heart-wrenching pain of betrayal, emerged as a symbol of resilience. A reminder that even in the darkest moments, the human spirit can rise again. And as the chapters of their lives continued to unfold, the hope for a peaceful, honest future burned bright, illuminating the path forward away from the shadows of deceit and into the promise of a new beginning. This narrative not only delves into the twisted motives behind Alan's actions but also celebrates the strength of human resilience and the transformative power of truth. It paints a vivid picture of how trust can be manipulated, yet also how betrayal can serve as the catalyst for reclaiming one's destiny.